I just I'm on
Oh, my
stream.
cell phone's over there.
Yeah.
My cell phone is in use.
Wait, mine isn't in use though, right?
No.
No.
Okay, so I'll just...
Okay.
Let's see.
Oh, wait.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Oh, you look so cute.
Yeah, you look really fierce today. Really fierce.
Yeah.
I was like, it's Sunday.
It is. Yes.
I like
Sometimes
it
that's my
though.
shelter dress.
Yeah, I like the heat. I just love the humidity. Today to me is okay. It was.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
I walked from Penn Station to this office and I was like, oh my gosh, it is really hot.
We're just gonna have you guys be a little closer.
Tighter?
Okay.
Like that?
Just for the sake.
Also, touch the wheels. You know.
Oh, you can see me right now.
Cool.
Well, what's the second go?
Oh. So we should actually all move tighter to Dior, and Dior should move a step right.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, and this plug should.
Yeah. Is there?
No, that's why it's over here. How's it look now?
Well, that's the case here. We'll wrap around your chair. So
No, I can put it right here.
I know.
The issue was
No, because you were bumping it with your chair and moving gear.
no, it's
Oh,
right
you-
around options.
Oh, you can also. I think my computer will
Sorry,
make
look
it.
at
You
this
can unplug it if you want.
Oh,
Yikes.
wow.
I'm gonna
That's
save that for
intense.
later. Or that. No, because
Really?
the headline is. Oh wait, maybe I'll tell you later after we're not live.
Yeah.
'Cause-
After hours.
yeah. Fred, you're okay.
Okay. Are we live everywhere?
I think so.
Starting on
Okay,
Periscope.
right there.
Are we live on
Periscope
Facebook too?
keeps
Yep.
friggin' encountering an
Yes.
error. Oh wow.
Oh, that frame looks right.
Sarah, you live on your end?
No, but that's
Oh my god, I heard you.
That's extra. No.
No.
Extra.
That's entertainment.
Nice.
I used to love that show. I used to go back and forth.
With
to
Mary
that.
Hart?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh
And
my
John Tesh.
gosh. Oh,
That's
I
old.
remember that.
That's old.
You're like,
feathered.
yeah.
Feathered hair.
Cool.
I used to go back and forth to that.
So Sarah, you're gonna get that ready in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's. I'll figure it out.
No worries.
Yeah.
You got
Oh,
Periscope?
Oh yeah, totally fine.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, totally fine. Just for just talk a little bit louder than you normally would. Not like a yell, but just because of the no microphone situation. But other than that, I think everything will be good. Sarah will be fielding questions and
Great.
other stuff like that, and
What's the thingy for this
the
one?
password.
2460.
I knew that.
I hope no one ever finds that phone. We're live. We're gonna change it. No, we don't have to. I trust you guys.
But yeah, so whenever you guys are ready,
Alright.
we start the show.
Great.
I'm gonna get out of here.
And I think we can start now and then just upload Periscope whenever
Yeah.
it's ready.
No, I am dumb and had it logged in on both phones, so it was freaking out. So I got it. I got it.
All right, good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. I might even have it copy and pasted, so all you have to do is.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not what you got.
So we're
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Dior, and this is Jose, and I'm gonna have Asha introduce herself because I think she'd be the best at doing so.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me back. I'm Asha Tari. I'm one of the psychotherapists and life coaches that was invited back to speak to you guys during this minority mental health awareness month.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I finally get to meet you after all like the scheduling issues. So I guess I'd like to know what does Minority Mental Health Month mean to you?
That's a great way to start. I think first of all, it means we can acknowledge and allow for people of color in particular to embrace that we do have a right to receive treatment, to understand that it does not mean we're crazy, to embrace that we all need to take good care of our mental health, and that hopefully it destigmatizes people from understanding that mental illness is a very common biological and medical disease that many people suffer and live with, suffer from and live with. And so I'm hoping that if anything, it will encourage more people of color to speak out, to acknowledge that treatment is really important and that you can actually live with mental illness, and hopefully understand that there's different types of ways to receive help and support. So for me, it's really important that we get an opportunity to experience Mental Health Awareness Month twice in a year, and then in particular for people of color.
Do you feel like I don't know, because I think sometimes people have different opinions about it, where they think, well, why do we need to have an entire month separated, or shouldn't we just be included in general? So kind of feeling like we have to be separated in order to kind of get the attention that we need. Like, what are your thoughts about that?
I do think that we need to have a separate month to begin to start the process of more inclusion, because as we know, people of color are oftentimes in a category all by themselves when it comes to disparities in treatment and prevention, because of the taboo around discussing mental illness in communities of color, the generational gaps between who receives treatment nowadays as opposed to who once received treatment is another important reason why we do need to have people understand that it's very critical to the larger and broader conversation around mental health, and that it's okay for us to be able to prevent ourselves and start talking about it. So I think if we do have this month that's just segmented out for people of color, it'll allow people to be less ashamed, and then hopefully we can come around to understanding that it's something that across all spectrums, ages, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, people do experience. So it is important for us to have our own.
Absolutely, I agree. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh no, we should be grouped up, but like just wanted to get an idea. I'm also thinking in terms of like how I really appreciate, even though I don't know many, but I appreciate like POC only spaces or POC only support groups, and kind of just that reason too why I feel like we need to have a space that's all our own, where we feel like we don't have to educate other people, we feel like we have an affinity and a connection to other people who might have similar circumstances, not only in the mental health condition, but in terms of just culture, traditions, and stuff like that. So I think that that's really helpful too.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Jose, if you had any thoughts about what we've been talking about thus far?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it's just like really key to have particular representation, particularly because like I run all the social for Project UROK, and I think that like we represent or offer representation and a platform for people to air their voices from all backgrounds. So I think, and this is kind of a question that I also have for you, like how to effectively communicate, from your own perspective without feeling that shame, and how to embrace this month and use it effectively for ourselves, and not necessarily from an egotistical standpoint too, because I know that there are times when I get like a little like, oh, maybe I shouldn't use that voice because I have a fear of using that voice because I want to be included in, you know, in like an all lives matter kind of way, which is absolutely ridiculous. What are means by which we can effectively communicate our needs using this month to really show the need and therefore lack of representation as a means to embrace who we are and not feel ashamed for those things?
Well, I could say if we talk about just in light of what's going on currently with police brutality and African American men per se, and the African American community, where people are feeling traumatized, which is one of the illnesses that DSM-4 has under post-traumatic stress disorder, we can allow for people to feel a space to have dialogue about trauma and what trauma is and how people are re-traumatized when they see particular images or they are presented with stories and reports and media regarding people who are experiencing trauma each and every day. And I think when we utilize social media as a platform for people to be able to break the barriers to opening up the dialogue, it really does engage more people. And I've seen success, like even with your project, with people using photography and films and short films, documentaries, to be able to allow people the space to see images of people that look like them and be able to have an experience without feeling ashamed for what it is that we know people are oftentimes either living through or have seen in their own households or communities, but do not feel that they are given the opportunity or the permission to have discussions openly about it without being judged, without feeling as though people will label them to a title or even misunderstand that to say that you don't feel well or to have experiences that lead to other interruptions in your daily activity of life, such as dating or going to school or having a job or maintaining relationships, that is part of how mental illness is displayed. And so if people don't oftentimes know that, then they're afraid to even speak up or to ask questions because they're not quite sure if it is to be somewhat concerned or if that's normal or if something is not necessarily adaptive, what does maladaptive mean? So to be able to use different ways to communicate, and social media being one of them, gives people the, I think, permission to feel safe to have that dialogue.
What do you think?
I was actually thinking about another question when you were talking about trauma and hearing about how, like, with therapy, how a lot of people are looking for trauma-informed therapy and trauma-informed therapists. And I was going to ask you why it's so important. And I'm also just thinking about how through, studies that through DNA, ancestral DNA, that trauma passes through generations. And that's, like, a huge part of why trauma-informed.
I just read a huge article on that today.
Right, so like why trauma-informed care is so important, and I guess I wanted to know what your thoughts were, or if there were any additional reasons why that's so important when it comes to mental health care.
I actually just conducted a panel discussion this past Friday with another psychotherapist who's a trauma-informed CBT, which is a cognitive behavioral therapist, and now the conversations are coming out more from evidence-based research that trauma is a critical part of why we see in our settings, in mental health settings, so many people, because some of the symptoms that are experienced as a result of trauma look like anxiety, depression, or going back and forth between the two. So we're actually seeing that people are oftentimes coming into the office because they've had an earlier experience with trauma, maybe in early childhood, that was never acknowledged or recognized as trauma. And so it's coming now more into the work that we're doing to where we can screen people for trauma. We can be able to inform people of what some of the signs of trauma are, especially when you see it coming up again and again, when people are feeling like they're locked in is kind of like a way to describe it, into a situation or experience or an encounter that they feel either they are at flight or fight or resistance to, they freeze. So we help people to understand how that gets manifested in your body in terms of signs and symptoms, and also in terms of hypervigilant behavior. And so because we're seeing so much of this as a result too of chronic unemployment issues, warfare, violence, all of these different things that we're aware of are going on in our local society, but also our global community, is presenting evidence that is important now for research, medicine, practitioners in mental health, to allow people to label what it is that we know has been a part of the work that we've been doing for so long, but it's just not for a particular community such as war veterans. It's for people who are also young adults, parents, family members who are also experiencing intergenerational trauma. So yes, that is a really important thing.
There was actually a question about that, which was, yeah, that it just noting the effect of multi-generational trauma and how there have been studies. It's a link to an article, so I'm summarizing, but the question is about an article that talks about how they found that trauma shows up in genes for generations and why the conversation about that has been so oriented around white trauma, basically. It's always about like European genetics and do you have any it says just thoughts on that because it tends to just be a lot about the Holocaust and about situations in Europe.
But also, it's also been part of what people understand as related to people coming back home from the war. So initially, PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder wasn't even given a name until 1970. And we saw it here in America, more and more people coming back from Vietnam and other wars post-Vietnam that either could not get employment because they were suffering from severe and chronic mental illness and distress and hypervigilance. And they were having nightmares and terrors, and they were always on edge, and they had more anxiety. And so when physicians were treating them, they were treating just war veterans for the first 2-3 decades with post-traumatic stress disorder. But again, when we talk about the importance of mental health and cultural competency in communities of color with practitioners, it gets overlooked because we think as survivors of whatever ethnic group we belong to, that it's part of our normal makeup or as part of a history of context that we've lived through. So it's not given the space or I think the validity that people of color oftentimes are traumatic survivors of racism, of chronic unemployment, of housing inequities. So nowadays we actually see that, for example, in my practice, we do screens for children from 11 years old and above post-traumatic stress disorder because we know that children living in urban communities or at-risk communities for violence, domestic violence, inter-city violence, that we can see that there are symptoms that show up in those children that are often mislabeled as ADHD, but there's other underlying anxiety with those type of patients that come into the office. So we, as practitioners ourselves, have to allow for people of color to be able to recognize that you can have PTSD over generations, and that as a result of living through years of all these things that I've labeled, people are still experiencing those same symptoms to this very day. And so we're giving people the opportunity and space and the awareness and education to recognize it. And I think it allows people to feel respected for having the opportunity to feel as though they're not crazy or insane, that they know that although as survivors, there are still consequences of survival. And so being in this country, having gone through so many things that people of color have gone through, it's made for a different understanding that post-traumatic stress disorder has carried over past other barriers that we haven't seen prior to now.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about how a lot of communities of color don't have the language when it comes to talking about these issues. So it's never really brought up, and it's not something that we want to talk about. I'm also thinking about how there were studies that people think that African Americans don't experience pain. And so it's like their pain or what they go through doesn't matter as much. And so I think that certain issues that happen to, let's say, white people are researched more or cared for more, there are just more eyes and ears on it. So I'm just thinking that's kind of like contributes to it as well. And I think it sucks because I'll look at statistics and they'll have these sections for different ethnic minorities, but they'll be a few years behind, you know? And so it's like, what are the up-to-date statistics? And so feeling like, where can I get this information while others, there's always just information popping up every year. And so that feels upsetting, and I think that also contributes to the fact that we feel, and more so African Americans, that they don't matter. So
I think to also contribute to that part of what you're saying has a lot to do with who's providing treatment and who's doing the research and participants in research studies, which we know that people of color oftentimes are not willing to, as much as other communities, participate in trials for medication or for treatment because of the history in this country of Latinos and African Americans being used as experiments where we know the end results weren't so positive. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't see people of color in treatment offices. We don't see people seeking out care as much as we do people who are not of color. And it's a lot of reasons that I think that also adds to the story not being told accurately or inclusive of a broader scope of people that we do know are affected by mental illness. And as well as when people of color go to see practitioners, oftentimes they're a primary care physician. And in a 20-minute, if they get that long visit, if they even communicate to their physician signs or symptoms of what maybe someone in my office would come in and talk to me about, it may be underscored in the visit as something that's not related to their mental status. So people of color, from Native Americans to Latinos and African Americans too, often experience physical pain, which can be a very significant component to mental illness as opposed to people who are not of color. So you may have a woman come into the office who is Puerto Rican and will talk to you about feeling like she's constantly nervous or on edge, and she doesn't understand why. When she wakes up, she can't relax herself, and she always has to be moving and doing something at home because she doesn't know how to settle her thoughts. Or you may have an African American or Native American come into your office and complain about stomach pain, chronic stomach pain, or feel like they can't keep anything down no matter what they do, or that they're gaining weight although they're eating the same amount of food. And a doctor could totally overlook that because if they're on other medications for something else that's chronic, such as diabetes or hypertension, it may just be considered a side effect of medication as opposed to something else. And if your doctor doesn't have the time to spend with you to screen appropriately, then you're often going underdiagnosed or undiagnosed.
I mean, even people of color are more severely diagnosed because people don't understand it, or they view like the angry black man trope, or so they're usually more severely diagnosed, which then is upsetting because just being diagnosed in general is one thing, but then hearing that you have an entirely different diagnosis, that has a huge effect on someone's mental health and who they are as a person and how they identify.
We were just talking about that too earlier. We were just saying that when people are seen in a medical physician's office, if they are diagnosed, they're given more chronic diagnoses that are related to more things such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, psychotic features, especially if they talk to the idea or concept of communicating with the spirit world. So we know, people of color, there are lots of groups of people that communicate with the spirit world through certain practices.
Yep.
And that's a cultural piece of your experience and your lifestyle. It's not something that if you're not culturally competent, you may be aware of. And so you may get a diagnosis of schizophrenia when that has nothing to do with what you're describing to your practitioner. But if you're not aware on the outside looking in, then that's part of a whole community of people that worship a certain way, that honor a legacy that's passed through them, then you will often be diagnosed with something more chronic that's harder to remove from your chart than something else like anxiety or depression.
Yeah, I was thinking about some of the things that happened during the Minority Mental Health Summit that I went to in Birmingham this weekend, or actually late last week, and how there was a part where a doctor, I think her name was Dr. Jessica Deere, and she was talking about cultural competency and cultural humility, and how she gave us basically like this person, like it was a gender neutral name like Pat. They live with their parents and they don't really make any decisions beyond what their family says, and won't get married anytime soon and staying at home. And basically what were our assumptions, what were the things that we thought, and what gender we thought that person was, and then adding that, let's say it's a female or a male, and then let's say this person comes from an Asian American family, like what is your perception? How does that change according to what certain gender or cultural like parameters are involved? And so I thought that was really interesting. And then I was also just thinking about how there was a point during the lunch panel where I was speaking, and we had the question and answer portion, and this black man said that he saw the event being publicized on the news, and he decided to come because and talk because he had just found out that day that his wife has a mental illness and she's going to need long-term care from now on. And he was so upset because her family knew this for years. Her family knew what was going on, and he was never told. This was never communicated to him. And so now, you live one life, and then all of a sudden, the mother was going through things and just having a lot of symptoms, and just to be in a relationship with someone and having an idea of who they are, and then coming to find out that they have a mental illness, and now your whole life has changed, and it's because of that cycle of silence, and how if people are told early on, they might be better equipped to deal with it. I also think that a fellow panelist on the panel, her name was Adrienne Nieves, and she was talking about how growing up she wasn't told that there was mental illness in her family history, and how if she had known that, if people were talking and communicating about these things, then she would know she would have a predisposition. And so it's like you need to communicate these things, because if we don't know, you know what I mean? It's just the silence really can make things worse. And I thought that was really brave of that man to come and say, or mostly female group, and say, look, this is what's going on in my life right now, and I need help, and how he's glad that people are having these conversations, because I think that continues adding to the trauma and the generational ancestral trauma. I know it's in genes, and there's so much you can do, but if you create a space where you can talk about it, it won't be as difficult. And I'm thinking about how in future generations, the work that I'm doing, I want to make sure that my family can feel comfortable talking about these issues, and hopefully it'll change their minds and prioritize mental health, in addition with just so many other things that need to change as well.
And there has to be support services for caretakers. So
Absolutely.
people who are co-survivors of someone like this man who's going to have to possibly lose his wife, he's going to need support. He's going to need support from other men, other families, other husbands, other caretakers, because he has his own stuff that he's going to deal with as a result of seeing his wife probably transition right before his eyes, and not being aware of this being part of her genetic makeup. That has an emotional and physiological effect on people's wellness. And we know when you're worrying, you're sick, you can become sick through worry. So we want people to know that there are so many things out there available for family caregivers too, because if they don't know and they don't understand that there's support in putting labels to how they feel, because people then feel like they have survivor's guilt through seeing their loved ones become ill, and they try to rationalize all the things that they believe they could have done to either prevent or slow down the progressive illnesses that some of us are aware of people experience. So it's going to be, still I think a whole for us all to do this work to make the conversation more comfortable for folks, to be able to share these type of stories among groups of people so people can feel less isolated. And I think too, just to go back to one thing that you said, certain cultures don't even have the language for mental illness. I had Asian clients that I've worked with, and so have my colleagues, that in certain Asian countries, they don't say things like people are depressed. They don't really understand what that means. And so when you have a physician who's talking to an Asian client, per se, who might be first generation about mental illness, it's a different way of conversing on the topic matter, because it may not have the same impact, or it may have a different type of understanding for that particular client than it would for someone who may have been here for a couple of generations. So when we think about what gets passed down, language gets passed down, expression of language gets passed down as well as behaviors get passed down too. So people don't have the language for it, then we help to educate them about what these things that they're experiencing is. And then we also try to normalize it. But when we have people who come into, let's say, my office, for example, it's hard to talk about something that maybe your mother or father wanted to avoid or hide because they were ashamed. And if we don't know that our family has a history of it because possibly, one or two generations back, if we were undereducated about it, then people are not quite as aware often as to what something is. It was easier to have an intellectual disability at one point than to have a mental health disability. And we do know that mental illness can become a disability for some people.
Right, I totally agree. I think it's about us in this room, in addition to everybody out there on their social, not only using the tools that we have and the resources that we have to research and make the language accessible to ourselves, but it's about all of us openly and authentically communicating these words in an accessible way as a means to share and not to be exclusionary in our community. I think it can be really difficult sometimes, especially when we're first discussing mental health and coming to terms with mental illness as a family or even with friends. Having a shared set of words that might be lighter at first and then digging deeper and digging into that comfort and that openness. I know when I first received my diagnosis, I was severely depressed from an incredibly traumatic experience exactly 1 year ago, 2 days ago, which is pretty, and yeah, it was huge, but at first I had absolutely no language how to communicate it, let alone communicate it to, I'm half Puerto Rican, half white, and no means to communicate that with either side of my family, let alone my Puerto Rican side of my family. No common vocabulary, a huge fear of not being able to effectively communicate as well. To say, here's what I have going on. Do you trust me? Do you believe me? Do I believe me? And are these words enough to share what is going on? So it's it's exactly as you said, finding permission and having these conversations and creating dialogues to cultivate self-permission and awareness within oneself and within our community to really continue to further the conversation and make it beyond, what we talk about so often, depression and anxiety. There's so much more underneath that we still really need to dig into, and I also think that I'm really lucky because I have the means of effectively communicating to so many people about this every single day via social media, and a huge support team here at UROK. And I wonder if you have any tips on effectively communicating with family or friends, whether that's via social media, text, a phone call. We deal with a lot of college students, kids, young adults who are not necessarily able to have a face-to-face conversation as they're having these experiences at universities. If they are still living at home, in high school, how to use the tools that we have now to glean that information for themselves and then share it.
So that's a great question. Yes, a couple of tips I would give because I do work with predominantly millennials, and one of the things I do hear is people saying that either their mom or their dad does not know, or they don't believe they can handle the news of seeing a therapist because it then takes away the conversation off of the individual and it becomes more about the family and what the family may have quote-unquote failed to do. What we do know from research and empirical evidence is that oftentimes people have their first mental health break their first and second year of college. So we'll see a large percentage of people either in hospitals or outpatient facilities between the ages of 18 to 21. And that's because of the major transition of people going from high school, living at home with their families, into and maybe off-campus living arrangements or a far away from home living situation, and they're trying to adapt to a new environment. The multiple responsibilities of living independent of their families as a young adult, having to manage oftentimes a hectic school schedule and possibly an additional responsibility such as a job. Some people are also taking care of their families still, and the pressure to succeed is so extremely high that you'll see people having an enormous amount of stress during that particular time in their lives. So one of the things I would encourage is that we have more understanding and hopefully some legislation to pass more laws and have more funding so that we can have more mental health practitioners on college campuses. Because I know, and I've talked to other people who work in school settings and in the graduate level and undergraduate level, that there may be thousands of students per one practitioner on campus, and that's like almost unimaginable. Yeah, especially with maybe one mental health practitioner and then possibly a nurse practitioner on staff as well, and local hospitals not being able to manage all of the stresses coming along with that too. So one of the things that I would encourage people to do is, and I don't encourage often for people to use the internet to self-diagnose, but what I do encourage people to do is to find free resources that you can utilize through social media, such as there are mental health blogs that are utilized by people who live with mental illness that are helping to provide support. And a lot of them are really great blogs where they provide hotlines and online chat rooms for people to feel that they're a part of a community so that they can start to understand the language and some of the signs and who's out there that can support and provide the encouragement for them to share their story and then hopefully be able to coach them through how to share that story with their loved ones. So I would say, you can literally Google mental health support groups or mental health blogs online, and you can find some really great resources that way. And they often give disclaimers about this not being, a final resource for you to need treatment. Two, I would also utilize what's free and available, because we know young adults who are in college or maybe working are either underemployed or unemployed. So utilize your free medical coverage. We know through the Affordable Care Act that mental health parity is part of legislation, so people do have the right to speak to their doctor about screenings and about referrals to see a therapist. So if they have insurance with their parents, which you're allowed to have now through age 26, and you're in college or working, you can actually seek out support by going to a doctor and asking for a referral to see a mental health provider. So that's first and foremost, so you don't have to pay out of pocket for it, or if you do, you may pay a low copay. I'm fortunate enough that I'm also part of a network called Open Path Collective, where there are thousands of clinicians nationwide that provide mental health services at an extremely discounted rate. So people can really Google Open Path Collective or low-cost mental health treatment, and they can seek out services by paying almost what you would pay for a copay to see your doctor. You can actually see a therapist and get a full session ongoing at an extremely discounted rate. So that's another way to start to have someone that is objective to work with you, to normalize what you're feeling, witness your journey and your story, and then help you through being able to share that story with people that you know need to have that conversation. And finally, when you do feel prepared mentally, prepared for emotionally what the experience could be, and it may be a different one than you envision, with your family, you want to start by saying this is your story, and that you would like to feel that you can share this story with your mom and or dad or siblings without being judged, uninterrupted, and to understand that nothing they did could have created this. Because when I see and speak to a lot of people, that's part of what hinders folks from sharing their stories, that the family starts to feel bad because they think that they could have done more, or that they didn't do enough, or that it becomes something that's a self-injury for the family, and it's really not about that.
There are a couple questions, one of which was on my Periscope and was real brief, just why I'm sorry, how do white people not have black friends? CCE Entertainment. I think it was about the hot curling iron. They were like, what is a hot comb? We just discovered it. Celebrities love it, and it's like, anyways. So if you want to address that, you can. But the other one was how do white people not have black friends? The other one was thoughts on cultural, quote unquote, alternative treatments.
What does that mean? Cultural alternative treatment.
Are you
So-
talking about like the spiritual things you were talking about?
I
earlier?
think
Maybe
that's about and I think like just
Yeah.
pursue yeah.
I'll address that. I didn't say that with that really right now.
I would say really.
Yeah, I like what you said. It's choices. You
Yeah.
decide
Choices.
what you're friends with.
Yeah.
That's what you're friends with. That's interesting. But
So I like the
agree.
Periscope comment. CC colon E Entertainment.
yeah, cultural, I guess, alternative treatments would include that people can actually find therapists now that have provide spiritual counseling, which I know that's important to some people. It's non-sectarian, but it can be involving different practices that people who are interested in receiving. I also know, for example, colleagues that provide counseling and energy healing, using crystals, using meditation, mindfulness meditation work, and yoga. So there's an integration nowadays. I'm seeing an influx of integration of different modalities of treatment, so that people are providing sometimes one or two different styles of treatment, which people can often find through searches through Psychology Today, Open Path Collective. Sometimes you can only Google that. I know folks like myself, I offer it to people, but it's not combined psychotherapy services, but I also do life coaching. They're uniquely different, but there are people that actually integrate the two. So when we speak of, spiritual counseling or cultural alternatives, there's not just the standard you lay on the couch and the doctor sits there and writes notes while you free associate. So we have practitioners that offer a range of things to people, and it's about finding the goodness of fit with the right psychotherapist for you. Some people do want to see a psychiatrist and replace some medications, and there are psychiatrists that do provide medication management and psychotherapy, as do psychiatric nurse practitioners. And then there's others that, of course, are not interested in that either, which is fine, and they may see someone who's a mental health counselor or a psychologist, or there's also, I'm finding more people who are, the name escapes me right now, but there's different types that are offering different types of services, so people can find out what's suitable to their needs and do your research. Nowadays, practitioners are online, so you can literally just Google people and find out their years of experience, they have sliding scale fees, which we talked about earlier, they accept insurance, what types of groups they work with. We have some practitioners that literally specialize in particular areas and particular groups. So millennials or the LGBTQIA community, or people of color, or people who are in the senior group, or people who have medical and mental health issues.
Thank you. Those were the only two so far. I will keep you guys posted. Thanks.
I wanted to have you share what you were talking to me about earlier about the group, the millennials group.
Oh yeah, I'm super excited about that. So because I mentioned I see a lot of millennials in my office, I'm offering a millennials mental health meetup. That's what we're calling it, but it's a support group, and it's for people who are living with anxiety and depression. Because as we know or may not know, I'm just going to give you some statistics that are really important for people to have. So we often, like you said, hear about depression and anxiety, but there's so many others. There's a myriad of psychological issues that are in our diagnostic and statistical manual, from bipolar disorder to personality disorders, to comorbid medical mental health issues. There's lots. But because we often hear so much, and I see so many people in the office for those reasons, 40% of people live with anxiety. That's a huge portion of American culture that is integrated into living with this. So we have like 40 million Americans each year are diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. It's actually the most common mental illness above depression. Depression, 16 million people actually live in America with depression, even though it's a growing number of people that have it. But anxiety disorders, which include general anxiety disorder, panic disorder, obsession compulsive disorder. Those are all part of the category under anxiety disorders. There are more people who are being diagnosed with that than there are people who are depressed. What I often see are people who are on the pole, so they have anxiety and depression, and they have seasonal depressive disorder. They have anxiety, which is persistent. So we're offering this group called Millennials Mental Health Meetup. It's for millennials, which fall into the age group of 18 to 34. I see adults in that age group. Most of my clients are between about 25 to about 31. So we're offering that as a support service. It's a group that's going to meet twice a month. We're registering people now. We actually end registration next Monday, the 25th of July. We're asking folks to email me at bhconsultingservices2@gmail and just put the subject title line as Millennials Mental Health Meetup. And in the inbox, just tell us, I'm interested. And we'll send out an enrollment sheet. The group will be closed once we have all the enrollees. And we'll meet in my office, which is on 34th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues, twice a month. The group costs $25. And it's about an hour and a half. You're going to learn skills and get a workbook to take home with you and have activities to do. And ultimately, not feel like you're living with this by yourself. So we're going to have people who are in the room that experience it as a result of living through whatever life things they've been going through. And I'll facilitate it, and we'll have some work for you to actually do and learn some new coping skills.
Amazing.
So I'm excited about it. So it starts the 27th of July. Registration ends next Monday, the 25th of July. And they just need to email us, and we'll get them registered. They pay $25 each time they come, which is twice a month, the first and the fourth Wednesdays of the month, from 6:45 to 8:15 at night.
That's awesome. And it's so cheap too.
Yeah.
Try to offer what's like affordable. People need help, and often what keeps people out of the office is that they can't afford it. That's why a lot of people see practitioners and through this, provider that I was speaking of, Open Path, because therapy is expensive, and if you're paying out of pocket, it can be quite unaffordable for most people. So we're offering something that is a much needed service that people want to participate in and commit to and make it reasonable.
Are you thinking of doing more of these meetups soon?
Yeah, I want to make this something that we can engage the community in, and it's just about getting people started, because most people have never been in a group before, so they're a little apprehensive, like, what's the group about, and what's
Yeah, people
I'm
are
shy to talk
Yeah.
in front of people, but it's an intimate setting. It's very small. We're going to have like 10 people, maybe, if that. And we're hoping that we're going to continue to reproduce it. I already have a support group for young professionals, and that was something that people didn't know what would entail in the beginning. Were afraid, didn't know each other. And now those young people are friends outside of the group, and they've been in the group for 2 years. And we meet once a month. Yeah, so give it a try. There's definitely a lot of research that backs and supports group therapy.
So there are some questions about, like, if you're not local to New York, are there any, like, is it like just like, can people Skype in, or is it something maybe they could do on their own, or
Good question.
yeah.
I'm actually trying to get more interest of people who want to do online work. I've been working hard to provide webinars, but it's just about finding the interest for people to know that it's available to them. I do provide for people that may be going through transitions in life coaching, because that can be Skyped in. People can call in for that, and we have packages so people know they're going to work on certain issues. It's time sensitive, and they're not going to be in coaching forever. But if I have people that are like eager, and several people contact me and say, hey, I would love to be a part of what you're doing, but I'm not in New York, then I'm open to creating something. Just need people to like bite back at me and just say, yeah, I want to do this, and we make it happen.
Right, I mean, even in terms of accessibility, like people who have physical disabilities, like if they can't go to an office, but they still
They want to
Get support.
participate. Yeah, and I have clients that actually receive some services via phone. So as much as possible, I do want to see people in the office, but I do remote therapy as well, and I do remote coaching.
That's great.
And one other question is, do you have any advice for someone who wants to find a doctor that shares their experiences? I'm assuming just in terms of like a person of color.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great question, because I get approached a lot where people say, I'm looking for a therapist, but I want someone that can relate to me, and I'm just looking for someone that looks like you. And I'm always honored and I feel privileged to be in this position. But I often say to people at the same time that there's no way of knowing that I'm going to relate to your story because I'm someone of color. And my background could be completely different from yours as a person of color too. And my job is not to make your story my story. I'm here to be objective, to help witness your journey and pain and your healing, and so that you can thrive and survive it. And that's what we will work through together. I have a therapist. My therapist is white, and she's middle aged, and she's from another state. But she totally gets me, and she has other clients of color, and I really feel like she was the perfect fit for me when I found her. So for me, that works for me. For other people, they do want someone that might look like me or look like you or look like
Jose.
Jose. And I
Yes.
stopped for a second because I was thinking about somebody else. I'm so sorry because I was thinking Jose. So people may want someone who is male or female or transgender or older. I mean, there's so many preferences. But yeah, I think if you want to find someone who is, you believe, going to relate to your story, and you're going to have to explain so much, which I often hear is, I don't want to explain, why I got stopped by the police. I don't explain why people are following me around the store and how that upsets me and that really changes the way I think of myself. That could be possible to have that experience with someone else that doesn't look like you. However, you want someone who's equally competent to do the job that you're paying them to do, and that allows you the process in doing so. So that to me is ultimately more important, but equally it's important to find someone that you feel you can connect to.
Well, it's like we in the live stream we did. It's like dating, and if somebody is making you feel, if making your experiences feel invalidated, then that's a problem on multiple levels, and you have to find someone that's not going to do that, regardless of how they look and how, like, yeah. But I do understand the not wanting to explain and just Yeah.
That's a big part of why I think people of color do not come into therapy, because only 4% of practitioners are people of color. That's psychologists and social workers and psychotherapists. So when we talk about people of color who provide this treatment, that is a very, very slim percentage of people. And if you're in a more rural area, it's going to be much more difficult to find someone of color or someone closer to where you live that you can get to by public transportation or by car. So there's a lot of providers now and organizations providing more remote therapy to people for that reason. And so what I do is I try to offer up to people that it's ultimately your responsibility and right to also interview that person that you're going to utilize for mental health services. You want to trust the person that you go to. You want to know that they have the available space for you. You don't want someone that's just like eager to take on clients because they're building their private practice and they're just taking everybody under the sun. You want someone who can make the time for you so you have your specific day and hour every week that you're going to chime in, call in, see your therapist. You want to know that your therapist has the availability for you. That your therapist, if you can't afford her and his rate, offers a sliding scale or takes insurance. You want to know that your therapist in an emergency has a covering practitioner. If they go on vacation and you can't reach them and you're in crisis, you want to know those things. So it's really important to understand that you have a right to do the interviewing too of who's going to see you, because this is going to be probably a long relationship that you're going to start to build trust with someone that is going to help you through a lot of what you're experiencing and why that brought you to therapy to begin with.
Were there any other?
No, those were good though.
Yeah.
Keep them coming. I
Yeah.
love those.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how, like, you can't be guaranteed that a person who looks like you is going to have the same experiences as you. And But then there's also the idea that you don't want to have to explain and that you don't want to have to educate someone when really it's about what you're going through rather than saying, okay, well, this is racism, or explaining maybe trans issues or something like that. Like, if they don't understand, then it's hard to kind of get to work, you know, like in terms of like, okay, I have these issues, I need to figure this out. Like, if there's a whole like seminar, then it's like you're paying to educate them, and I think that that's really the job of the mental health professional, to be prepared and to really be open about the different identities that people come in, you know, holding, carrying. So I think that's really important too. I think for me, I wanted someone who was Latina like me, but in the past I've had a therapist who was white, but she was lesbian, and so I felt like she had that experience of being marginalized in some form, and so that I felt like was enough to have that sort of connection with her. And also, I think she was very culturally competent. So it's a lot of different factors.
There are a lot of factors, yeah.
Right. Whereas I went to like 3 different therapists, and one tried to sell me Herbalife the first time I went, and I said absolutely not. Please listen to my issues. Whereas by the 3rd time, when I found my therapist, who's fantastic and open and also gay, like myself, like, it wasn't necessarily that he was gay that made me feel more connected. It was just his relativity to being open and receptive to what I was bringing to the table. Yeah, so I thought that was really amazing.
And
And important.
it is important. I'm so grateful that you continue to work until you found the right person, because so many people don't have the tenacity to go through 3 therapists before they find the right fit, and you did that. So I'm glad that you did, and I encourage more people to know that maybe the first time is not the right time, but there are good therapists, qualified, essential therapists to do the work, and we're all learning. I mean, I have some great colleagues that we're constantly learning about what our clients are living through, living with. You know, music people are listening to, personal interests that people have, because they bring that into their sessions. They bring that to the work that they're doing with you. So we're always evolving in the work, and it's now mandatory that in order to maintain our licenses that we continue our education. So we have to go for continuing education units, they're called, or CE units for short, in order to maintain our own license as practitioners. So that's a mandate that we have to abide by in order to practice, and I think that's really important, because that just raises the bar of standard for the work that we do that's so critical to people's wellness.
I think that's really amazing to hear as a minority as well, just because I think it is really keen to stay educated, and to know that practitioners have to stay educated means that there is the opportunity for a safer space for more people and more of that open, inclusive community in someone's office, in addition to hopefully outside soon.
So we have 5 minutes left, and I wanted to just ask a question of my own, and then if you guys have anything that you want to wrap up with. My question would be, did you have any advice for somebody who was considering a career in the mental health care field?
I love that. Yeah, at one point, to be honest, I used to feel discouraged by people going into my field, because I went to school for social work, and I just was like really sad by the slow progression of the social work industry, and how we're still so undervalued as an industry, underpaid as an industry, and we do so much work in so many different types of communities. And when people would come to me and say, "Oh, I'm not going to social work school," talk to me, like, don't talk to me, because I don't think that's a good idea. But now, what I did was I continued to go on, and I got my master's degree, and then I went on for postgraduate training, and I have my license and my certification now as a life coach. So I think for me it was the right path, because I felt hit the glass ceiling. I just continued to grow, and so I am now in my own private practice, and then I added on life coaching as a certification. And so I know a lot of people who are doing like phenomenal types of work and are specializing. So yes, now I think we're living in an age where you can create your own profession. You can create your own type of way to help people. And I think in order to go to school and get trained, it's really important to doing this type of work. So continue to learn and grow and find a way to reach people in creative new ways, which I think now practitioners are doing by having Facebook accounts and being on LinkedIn and doing things like this, where they're having YouTube channels to stream and talk about mental illness and making it less of a stigma. So I would say, yeah, go on to school, get your graduate training, keep your feet wet, like try new things in the industry, try different types of social work or mental health counseling in different populations. There's a broad array of places that people can actually work in, and you're gonna grind. You're gonna get training. You're gonna go through your 2 internships, and you're gonna be down here on the bottom ladder when you first come out of school, because you're gonna grow yourself and develop yourself into the best person to provide a service. And now, as we know, with so much going on in the world, there's going to be a continuous need for people like me to be in the field. And you could do it internationally.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you too, Jose. I cannot forget
It's
your name.
all good.
I'm so sorry.
Would you mind repeating your email address for everybody?
They can actually go to my website. That'll be easier. So if you go through www.bhconsultingservices.net, that's behavioral health it stands for. So bhconsultingservices.net, and you can find out more about how to reach me. My number's there. You can fill out a confidential short form about services. I do provide free consultations to anyone who calls up my number or emails me, so they can get a free phone consultation from anywhere they are. And we offer referral services. So let's say if you're not here or there's some way I can't provide a service for you, we will refer you out to an appropriate person.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm
And
so
follow
grateful
me on social
for you.
media.
Yes,
Yeah.
follow us on social media.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too. This is great.
Bye,
I
Facebook.
enjoyed it.
Bye, guys.